Well, good afternoon and a warm welcome to all who've tuned in for today's From the Artist Talk. My name is Nina Shadforth, Senior Curator for Collections Gallery. I'd first like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we bring you this program and pay my respects to elders past and present. I recognise that the Kabi Kabi and Jinnabara People's Country of the coastal plains and hinterlands of the Sunshine Coast have always been and continue to be places of cultural, social, spiritual and economic development. Now, our guest today is a guest artist working in who honours the notion of reuse, recycle and repair within her arts practice and giving new life to the disposable and highlighting small stories within vintage papers and books. Karen Coull holds a BA in Visual Arts Painting from the University of Western Sydney. She is a recipient of the Blue Picture Trust Grant. Her work has been shown at solo shows across Australia and in France. Her work is represented in private and public collections in Australia, France, the US and the UK. And she has a bag of reviews in Sydney Morning Herald, the Australian, Sydney Daily Telegraph, Sebastian Smee, Joanna Mendelsohn, Bruce James, Anne Loxley, and Courtney Kidd. So that's quite an impressive range of critics to add into your CV. Karen's also a multiple finalist in a number of art awards around the nation and is, of course, one of the 40 finalists in this year's Sunshine Coast National Art Prize with her work, Unidentified Woman, #1, The Subtle Cost of Conformity. So this work is Karen's work here. So, Karen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nina, and thank you for working through the problems. Welcome.
We always seem to have something. It's just never straightforward, but we get through. So
excellent.
It's great to have you.
Thank you so much.
So we'll get started in the questions, but first things first. And you've stated that your background was firmly rooted in and formed by a profound narrative of the multi-generational fundamental religious women of your family. So that being said, how and when did you first become interested in art?
Gosh, I think like most people, as a child, I was a really sick child. And so it was the days before Ventolin, and I was a chronic asthmatic. So I spent a lot of time in bed. And my mother had an art box, and I would be handed over this wonderful art box. And I did collages and cutouts and painting, and of course glue. The glue was made from flour and water glue that you cooked up over the stove. I learned to knit and crochet, needlework, and I did all of those, and so made do then as well. Going on to high school, I chose Viz Arts as my elective, and I hated high school. I'll put my hand up for that, but my joy was 2 days a week I got to do art, and it was a great thing. Following on from that and balancing 70s and 80s life, I did a show card and ticket writing course through North Sydney TAFE in, mid-80s, and it was, I didn't finish it, unfortunately, but I had high hopes of becoming a sign writer. I was always fascinated with those beautiful shop front windows with the Christmas paintings and all the rest of it. I loved it.
Okay.
From that, around that time, it was still busy. It was the 70s, 80s, things were happening, life was going on. And it wasn't until 1988 and the beautiful gallery at Campbelltown had just opened, that fabulous regional gallery, and it was just a showcase piece. And David Fairburn offered evening painting classes there. And so I did painting classes with David Fairburn. It then went on to, after the class finished, I went on to university. And so I went to the University of Western Sydney, Nepean, And at the time, cutting edge university. It was really, there was so much going on. It was a fabulous university. It was under the Department of Performing and Visual Arts and did a Bachelor of Arts. Subsequently to that, in 2010 or 2011, I was overseas at the time, but the university was shut down by the then Liberal government of the time, who decided the Western suburbs didn't need an arts university. So the arts department disappeared, and unfortunately there was no more. The only arts departments doing programs were back in the city.
Gosh. And so David Fairbairn, coincidentally, has a number of works in the art collection.
Oh, fantastic.
So, and he's also a former SCAP winner. I think he...
Oh, goodness me.
Oh, might have been 2012 or 2011. I think he...
Right.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
So was his influence on you because it was painting classes? So is that where you thought that was your place in terms of art?
I did, and I think I didn't know of the variety. So I went into the painting department, and at the time, the painting department was a very masculine, blokey place. There was only male lecturers, and the expectation of that time was, perhaps I took that on, but it was certainly reinforced through a lot of the work, was doing big modernist paintings. It wasn't until my last year at university, and in my final year, just before I was starting to make work for the final graduation program, that I thought, I'm not painting, I'm going to do needlework, which went over like a lead balloon. And I made beautiful, tall boxes on hand-carved legs, and they were padded and really finely hand embroidery over these boxes, and collages, and a series of collages. And 6 weeks before the show was due to start, one of the lecturers came into my space, and he looked at me, he looked at the art, he looked at me, looked at the art again, and said, "It's not too late to whip up a painting." Which was subsequently, the work was really well received, and the university bought 4 of the works for their collection. So it went fine, and I didn't need to whip up a painting.
That landed very well then for you, and
absolutely.
And yeah, that's great to hear that it didn't shatter any confidence you had.
Oh no.
Through and to push through with an art form that really speaks about what you do now.
Yes.
And have continued to do. Is that right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about the work that you entered in this year's Art Prize, Unidentified Woman #1, The Subtle Cost of Conformity. So it's from the Unidentified Women series, is that right?
Yes, yes it is.
Because there's a few other similar series that I'd like to touch on, but basically the image is a portrait, black and white portrait of an unidentified woman, and she's screened by this regular placement series, like a grid of coloured squares. So it's quite a contrast. And so I just want to understand what it is about the title, The Subtle Cost of Conformity. What it is that you're wanting to say?
I think when I found the images on the Smithsonian, and they went on to their free edit images, and it was fabulous. You could go through and find images to use in your artwork. And as a collage artist, it's really important to make sure you're using images that are copyright free. And all of the male the photographs of the men at the time all had these great long titles, like Captain Watsy of the Watsy Brigade, and all really detailed in their full names. But there was a series of women that had unidentified women, because the women didn't have names. They were sort of the black and white and sort of sitting back.
That's interesting.
And very interesting. And it was of the times as well, and like my, background, it was really important for me to sort of bring these women out from the background and sort of give them these bright colours and go and formulate a new story for these women. And of course, my love is paper. My primary love is paper and collage. And so I was using recycled and reused paper and retro papers, but to give them colour and story and, you know, to bring out a story for them.
I love it. It's yeah, it comes from a place of, you know, your background and looking at, yeah, how women were placed in society and the unimportance of it all is
Oh,
really so strong now. Like you just, yeah, bring it to the fore. So you've got Unidentified Women series, you've got Invisible Women series as well. So I want to talk to us, just unpack a little bit about that as well.
the work, well, the Invisible Women, I come from a very strong matriarchal line of women. And these women, the images from when they're younger, and there were 6 sisters, and they're all standing there laughing, and, you know, quite life is, you know, free and open. And they sort of got knocked down as time went through, and they became more and more dour. And my grandmother was a very dour, tough woman. She was born in 1899, and so lived through a lot of those, you know, depression and all those really hard times, and lost 2 husbands, and things moved on. And then had my mother and her sister in her early 40s, which is common now, but it wasn't common then. You know, women were aged by, you know, 65 at my age. You were certainly sort of put aside and raising your grandchildren or what have you. And I think I wanted to sort of showcase the invisible women. All of these women were in the background. And even my mother, who was an incredibly tenacious woman that lived through so much tragedy. And she was a widow at, you know, 38. And then she then passed away at just after her 40th birthday. So it's about just bringing recognition to these lost women and showcasing them.
Yeah, lovely. It's yeah, I love it. And that, you know, that the nature of collecting imagery from those eras as well speaks a lot about what you're trying to say in terms of
Yes, yeah.
these women that are not visible, not to the forefront. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is you are a collage artist, and that, you know, means that you'd be scouring papers and all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
What does your studio look like with all of these?
Well, my studio at the moment is absolutely empty because I moved. I moved at the end of July, the residency finished, and I went overseas for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So I had to have everything cleared away, and I'm looking for a new studio. So at the moment, my studio is my desk.
Okay.
So my idea of portability works very, very good. So things I can move about.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of looking for a new studio so I can make a mess. However, I do like an ordered studio. I like things structured and ordered, and I think because I was a single parent with 3 children,
Yeah.
and you know, and I made work directly, talking to the drudgery and monotonous, you know, every day in housework. So I liked order, but I had 3 children. It was never going to be ordered. So now I quite like a sort of a pretty organised workspace.
Yeah. And so are you sort of constantly, would you frequent op shops for the vintage content, or where do you find?
Absolutely. I am a bit of a, I wouldn't say hoarder, well, just hoarder, but beautiful things and beautiful papers. I use what's about, you know, and I've always that making do, and that's of that generation too, that, you know, from the women of my past, you had to reuse and recycle and make do. And when I started making art, I was a single parent going through uni. I had no money. So I made do and I used what I could find. And not only through op shops, in those days, the side of the road, people were always throwing out things, and I was using ready-mades and found objects. And where a lot of my work that's gone on, I've found on the side of the road. And in one work that I spoke about actually last week at Casula, and it was in their collection, is a beautiful broom that I found on the side of the road. And this beautiful and weathered and aged, and the bristles sort of out like a symmetrical wave. And with that one, and with a series of work, I covered them with rose thorns and blackberry thorns found from the side of the road.
Okay.
And so, and each of those thorns, I had a son that I put him in the front seat to keep him occupied, and he was the spotter. And as we're driving around through these country roads, he'd call out, "There's a patch." And I'd jump out with my secateurs and cut these and harvest these prunings of, blackberries,
Yeah.
and take them home. And at night, very carefully peel off all these rose thorns and sand their little bottoms so they're all flat, nothing if not detailed. And my hands were always a bloodied and scratched mess.
Yeah.
And last year, I revisited the process and made a work that was accepted for the Wallara Small Sculpture Prize. And again, I had bloodied and scratched hands.
I'm sure it was worth it. In the end. So let's talk more about your 3D tendency, that you like working in 3D forms, and even with paper forms, I see
Absolutely.
expressions of sort of paper forms that are coming out from the page or coming out from a flat surface or holding its own as a three-dimensional form. So
Yes.
yeah, is there any particular works that you'd like to sort of highlight?
I think
The challenging
journey to the year I became invisible was a big one, a big piece. I think it was maybe, I don't know, 1.3 by about 1. And it won the drawing prize at the Wallara Art Prize, Waverley Art Prize. And it was layers of vintage maps and vintage drawings and papers, which I stitched together. And so I do love paper that you can stitch it and move it about. And it sort of then made a map of places I've lived at and environments that were special to me, but all with that beautiful vintage paper that you can't get the colours or anything else with that. And again, it was affordability.
Yeah.
So these maps that I'd sort of carted around for years. So yes, I do have a stash of papers and things that I love. And I love needlework. And so that was this repetitive, monotonous process, but also very mindful and, enjoyable. I could sit there and just, listen to a podcast or something, but I could keep stitching and sort of sew and work on these always detailed and time consuming. But I really like the process of slow art.
Slow art, yes. And just another term that links to that I discovered on your Instagram page is analog collage, the hashtag.
Yes.
So what is that?
Analog collage is handmade collage. So as opposed to digital collage, which is some people's jam, and that's great for them, but I love the process, the handmade. And so sitting and mindfully cutting out and placement. So a lot of people now are doing collage, and whether or not they put the thought into it that I do, because I love the time it's spent with it. In fact, why analog collage is so important, during lockdown and the pandemic, I went online, and online is social media has got some great horrors to it, but online for the arts community, it's actually quite a supportive community. And the analog and the collage women, fabulous community across the world, you know, and doing wonderful things and always supportive, and you could put work out there and sort of get feedback on it. So I think that part of the community was really good as well.
That's great. And in terms of like digital collage, that's not your jam. You don't feel that you would ever sort of play in that space, or
Possibly, but digital's not my thing. Technology's not my thing, Nina. So it's no, I worked in the corporate world for a few years, and it was always wonderful to be able to pick up the phone and ring the IT desk, and someone would come down and fix it for you.
I like that too.
Yes, so do I.
And they're there to help. So you love the process of cutting and collecting and of course arranging. So every
Yes.
piece on that work that's in the art prize, so every piece that's been cut as a square, you've been quite purposeful in where, like the color
It's
arrangement,
gone.
everything.
Absolutely. And I think I love working in series for that reason, that everything is different, but you're actually moving through a process. And you can use that series to sort of move through ideas and processes. And as a whole, I love seeing series as a whole. So the work in that one and all of the behind that, they're all cut out, the squares are cut out. So it's like it's sort of woven into the story. And that's what I wanted. And the lining up, I don't cut a straight line at all very well. Even with a ruler, the still ends up crooked. And so cutting out those holes with the process as well.
Yes, gosh. Yeah, and there's a lot of squares.
There are a lot of squares.
You can see.
Yes. And they all had to line up and be perfectly symmetrical. Yes, destroyed a lot of works doing that.
Oh. So there's something, you know, what challenges do you find when you do create these collage works?
When I am creative, I really like.
Can't use an eraser to rub out a mistake.
Oh, absolutely. My hands are, I've got gardeners and artist hands. They're always looking a mess and they're scarred and bloody. They're never going to be pretty. Someone recently said to me, oh, why don't you get your nails done? I said, I've worn nail polish 3 times in my life. It's just, I don't want to showcase these hands, thanks. They're working hands.
Working hands. What you
The challenges, I think, is because I've started working big, because I thought these women deserved to be seen and to be shown. So I wanted big.
Yeah.
Getting them framed is difficult. Moving them about is difficult, because the joy of working in smaller domestic size and portable, you know, I could sit at the kitchen table, I could work on these smaller images and take them with me.
Yeah.
I've recently come back from, I was overseas for 5 weeks in the US, and I took work with me, and it was the first time I've actually not done work. I read a couple of books though, which was very nice, but I took it with me, and it is that thing about being portable. But with these women, they deserve to be seen and deserve to be big. So that was an important consideration now with the challenges of working big. And
so those obviously the source image or the primary image naturally isn't that size. So is the image then scanned in and printed to a size? Because they are, it is quite a large work, the one that's in the art prize. So
yes. So they are scanned and printed, and then they come back to me, and then I work on them. But I often work on a smaller image first to see how it's going to work. And I'm quite anal about where I put things. So I'll do a smaller one first. I do mock-ups and I sort of work out my colours and what works best. And I've been known to, after spending hours and, you know, days on a work. If it doesn't look good, I'll destroy it. So one of those women disappeared, unfortunately,
Oh,
but it just wasn't right. And so I wanted, you know, they deserve to look great. So they've moved on. And framing them, you know, I've got a wonderful framer at Balmain, Andrew Bassett, who does the most divine, beautiful frames. And so because someone said you could pin them onto a studio wall or pin them into a gallery wall. And I thought, no, you know, they deserve to be framed.
and so before you went to the States, you had just finished a residency. So what was that like? How did that come about?
It was the City of Sydney have 6 studio apartments that are leased out for 18 months' time for a very, very peppercorn rent. And so it's a highly sought after, and especially now, this round, I know a few people that have applied for it and hundreds have gone for it.
Oh, wow.
So it's a fabulous spot above the Australian Design Centre in William Street, Sydney. So you're right in the centre of it. It's great. You can, you know, get about and do openings and get about and see things. And they're 1-bedroom units. They're fabulous. There's a rooftop terrace up at the top, and you're with other fabulous artists. So you've got sharing this community of support and sharing ideas. And the City of Sydney are fabulous. Their arts people were so good and always coming back to you. You know, if any questions, they'd come back to you immediately and respond, and were there for any ideas or thoughts. They would be so open to it and really keen to, you know, help you out. So it was very sad to leave it. Okay. And so I finished that up on the 31st of July. That ended, but I went overseas on the 30th of July. So it's been a busy few months.
So, and so having that residency experience, what are your takeaways from that in terms of potentially informing future works?
Informing future works, it gave me the, because I still work, I work part-time as an invigilator host at a big gallery. Sounds glamorous. It's not glamorous. It's hard work, and you're on your feet all day. So it afforded me the possibility to go down to part-time. I do 3 days a week. The rest of the time could be devoted to art. I was so close to my workplace that I could be home sitting at the desk and making art at night after work, and going to openings and what have you. I think what I take away from that is put your hand up for grants. I'm, you know, 63, and for years I wouldn't touch them. I thought the process was too hard. Anyone that's offering grants and prizes, they want to help you.
Yes.
Contact them with emails and what have you. And people, I think, are just sometimes so put off by the reams of paperwork that they necessitate.
Right, and it is, you know, in the past it's been quite daunting, and I think, you know, it's slowly getting a bit easier to interpret and express what it is, the project that you're trying to get funding for. So, but you know, that's a great setup in terms of the residency. It's
absolutely
part of everything.
And now with Sydney rentals is so high that it's really, I think the applications have closed, but it's and they will be announcing their next 6 people again soon. But a wonderful program, and there are other programs out there, and there are other guest residencies. You know, Bundanoon have some. In the city, I'm thinking what else? Wallara and has wonderful residency spaces and too. So go for them. Say yes to everything.
That's good advice for anyone who's sort of practicing and thinking about residencies. It's great advice, Karen.
Absolutely.
Aside from your family influence, in terms of art, who or what has been the greatest influence?
Oh gosh, we've got such strong Australian women artists. I think Fiona Hall, Fiona Davies, Fleur MacDonald, Julie Rapp, Deborah Kelly in the collage realm, Bronwyn Oliver, the most wonderful Bronwyn Oliver that we lost
Not so.
overseas, Louise Bourgeois, of course. In the early days, Judy Chicago and the Dinner Party series, I was just cutting edge for me and opened my eyes so much to what was women's art and the women's house artists. And I was lucky enough to see the women's house
Okay.
exhibition in Paris, in the Monnerie in Paris in the late 2000s. And it was just, there's great sort of opportunities out there. I think my number one primary inspiration would be Rosalie Gascoigne.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Rosalie Gascoigne, with her found assemblages and sculptures, with the Master of Transformation, and she had her first solo show at 57. She used to sit around the kitchen table and make art. And so she, she's out there. She was out there and doing stuff and collecting. And she was a bit like me with the bowerbird collecting from the side of the road. But it's never too late. Get up and do it. And life's short. Just say yes.
I love that. I think that's good. And yeah, she was such such a prominent female figure.
Yes. Yes.
And so, distinct in terms of her aesthetic and her art making. So, and career highlights for you? Is there
career highlights?
any that
I've had some wonderful career highlights, and I've been very lucky to win some prizes and do things and travel. Do you know, I think my highlight was university. I think people don't realise how fabulous and lucky you are to, be at university, surrounded by art. I went to university, our course was 5 days a week. And so it was a balance, and I was convinced I was going to be caught out as being a fraud because I went as a mature age student at, in my 30s. But so I really put an awful lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
But you have that environment where everyone's talking about art. You're getting feedback on your art. You can make art and live art. And it's a really important time in an artist's career. And to make the most of it. And you often get overwhelmed and, essays and balancing work life and, working as well. But it's such a good time in an artist's career. And I think that was, one of the highlights of my career.
Oh, that's great. And, as you said earlier, that exhibition, that your graduate exhibition.
Absolutely.
You chose not to paint.
Yes, in the painting department, it was fabulous.
And create something that was true to you. And
yes.
That to me, I was going to ask you about, what was the transition from painting to collage, but that was it. And that from there you launched, I guess, in terms of your practice and what you enjoy making and creating.
Absolutely.
And your first gallery solo show, how did that come about?
Gosh, where was that? Was that 4A? Well, 4A Gallery, was it 4A or Performance Space? Well, 4A Performance Space.
Yeah.
That I applied for. In those days, you applied for your shows. And I was, bold and full of, courage. But you sent off slides. And of course, you didn't have these digital images you can do now. So you'd only had to have a few supplies of your slides, and so often they were glass slides, so they'd have to be wrapped up in bubble wrap, and you'd literally post them off to galleries, and you'd have to keep your fingers crossed and just hope. And a lot of it now is going out and being seen at the right galleries. Now, I had 3 children at home and single parent. I wasn't doing all the schmoozing that I missed out on, I think, at university. And open nights, but do that. Get out, go to the openings, go to the galleries, because you need to be seen and recognised. But in the old days, no, we sent off our slides and just hoped we think, do I send off these good ones or these second good ones? And it was the time of slides and, talking to people. And I think I was very lucky with the wonderful John Kirkman from Casula Powerhouse, who was the director at the time of the inaugural opening. And he was just such a great support and sort of, carried me through and invited me to make art for that original show. So that was a great opportunity for me.
And that was collage as well.
That was 3D sculptures, and surprisingly, and with apologies to anyone that bought these works, like Ebony Russell's work with the cake, the cake with the plaster and the clay, I actually made royal icing, beautiful 2D hanging on the wall, made out of royal icing and rose thorns. It had to be stuff I had at home.
Cultivation issue, but yes.
Absolutely. So I don't think the royal icing ones have survived anymore, and they sold out very well. And it was funny because another work that was in the that show was a pair of silicone gloves covered in thorns, and it was a bit called Soft Touch. And so it was about the drudgery of housework. And recently, and they're in a particular collection, the Casula Liverpool collection, and an arts worker said to me, and they've deteriorated, of course, they were silicone gloves. Arts worker said to me, well, why would you make work out of a work that has material that has the potential to deteriorate? Well, it was 30 years ago.
So,
I also was a young single parent, and you made do. You used what you had, and that is why I made work. Well, and anyway, I still think they look fine. They're discoloured, but they're doing all right.
you get to see them every now and again. It's
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, look, we're getting close to the end of our chat, but I want to see if we've got questions from the floor. And oh, look at that. So the first one I've got here, which contemporary historical artists inspire you?
Contemporary historical artist. What's a contemporary historical artist?
Contemporary / historical, so either or.
Oh, either. Inspired me. Rosalie Gascoigne. I'll go back to Rosalie Gascoigne. It has to be. I once took a temp job because I used to be a temp to balance art and kids and all the rest of it. And I was a temp, and I once took a job at Allen's law firm in Sydney, which has a wonderful Australian art collection, because opposite where I would be sitting was this beautiful Rosalie Gascoigne.
Oh.
And so I took the job, but I think it was an 8-week job just so I could sit there and look at this artwork.
Oh, that's fantastic. That was a nice little bonus for the job.
Yes, absolutely.
With that. Comment from Rocks from the floor. Love that prickly rose thorn work. So Rock.
Oh, thank you so much, Ross. I appreciate that.
And can you talk about your sleep pillows series?
The sleep pillows. This is a dreadful thing, but someone contacted me recently and said, I wrote about your pillow. And I said, oh, the sleep pillows. No, that was a different pillows. I did a couple of series, but I'd forgotten about them. The sleep pillows were pillows I made 60 because I never do anything small scale, and I did series of bedroom pillows covered with beautiful organza and beautiful French seams, and they were done perfectly. But all the words on all of the pillows were talking about lack of sleep. I still sleep poorly. I haven't slept, the joy of being able to sleep more than 4 hours is a good thing. But on the pillows, I, in beautiful text with pins, and I mean, these pillows, individual pillows weighed a ton because there were so many pins spelling out these words and all talking about words of sleep. So everything from, French words and just anything that had to do with sleep, Valium or sleep or night, and all of these words and these beautiful pillows. And unfortunately, when I moved overseas, they went into storage because they were supposed to move on to a show, that the show fell over, and the pillows just aren't around anymore.
Right. And so the intention of those pillows in terms of like the gallery context, how would you plan to install them, like
Install them, look, possibly with a bed, possibly on the floor. I did a show at 4A Gallery with the wonderful Melissa Chu, who's now the director at the Hirshhorn in the States. And she curated this show, and it was, I did a organza quilt filled with feathers that I picked up from a chicken farm, washed all of these feathers, cut all the ends, and threw this sort of big quilt across the floor, and these sort of soft, sort of flowing pillows made out of feathers. So I don't know, I didn't get that opportunity, and I certainly didn't have a studio at that time big enough to sort of move around these 60 pillows, but
oh, yeah, that would take up a bit of space.
I would have thought about it.
Well, look, is that something that might sort of come to the surface in the future?
I have got so many ideas, and I think because I'm at the age I am, I sort of have this fierce desire to get work out and to do work. And so I've got lots of ideas, and it's just about having the time and the space to be able to sit down and make art. And so my theory is I come home from work, and if I'm tired, suck it up, sit at your desk and do some art. And it's I can sleep at another time. So it's yeah, so art's my focus, and making art's that focus. And I've got a huge list of things I want to try and sort of move forward with, especially with the Aging Women series.
So that's what you're currently working on, and that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's bringing us to the end of our chat. But you can follow Karen with her arts practice on her Instagram page, and the handle is Love Walking in Snow.
I do too.
So I'm not sure, I couldn't find, I didn't have a chance to find a website, but there's a Google search, Karen Coull artist, and you'll find a whole bunch of things. Interestingly, you were talking about art communities before, and there's a collage one that you're a part of that I saw, which was really interesting.
Excellent. I'll have a look. Yeah. But okay.
But the link we'll put in the chat. And so Karen, I wanted to say thank you once again for joining us. And
thank you, Nina.
Sharing your insights about your practice. And
thank you so much.
There may be some more questions coming, I'm not sure, but maybe stick around on in the back end and have a look, and if there's any questions you can respond in the comment. So we've got one more from the artist talk before the exhibition closes in just over a week's time. So next week, our director Jo Duke will be back from leave, and she'll be talking to another finalist on the Tuesday at 1 o'clock rather than our usual Wednesday. Next week is also our Night of Nights, the announcement of the art prize. And so there's the major prize sponsored by Argonne Law and Sunshine Coast Council. There's the highly commended sponsored by Dadain Family Trust, the People's Choice Award sponsored by Caloundra Chamber of Commerce, and the Artist Residency Award, which is sponsored by the Montville Country Cabins. So there's still some tickets available for that night. So that's on the Thursday night, the 3rd of October, not August, October at 6 o'clock, and followed by the Judges Walk and Talk Tour on the Friday morning at 9 o'clock. And I think there still might be some tickets available, but just jump online to the gallery's website to find the bookings. And there's still catalogues available at the gallery, where you'll see Karen's work alongside the other 39 finalists. And thank you once again for supporting arts and culture on the Sunshine Coast. And Karen, any last words?
Thank you very much for including me in such a strong year. The finalists are fabulous work, and it's just such an honour to be part of the group.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and wish you all the best for the night.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Great speaking to you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.